Zanj rebellion took place in Iraq during the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate, and was considered one of the bloodiest uprisings in Middle Eastern history. The Zanj were a Bantu people who were forcibly taken from East Africa in order to drain the marshland around the city of Basra in southern Iraq, after these had been abandoned by local peasants due to repeated flooding. The Zanj were also used to mine the salt flats in lower Iraq. They had previously tried to rebel twice, once in 689 AD and another time in 694 AD, but both of these were unsuccessful. However, during the 860s, the Abbasid Caliphate was weakened by internal strife, resulting in a civil war in 865, which almost bankrupted the government. The rebellion was initiated and led by Ali ibn Muhammad, who is known to be an Islamic scholar, although little else is known about him for certain. Differing accounts tell us he was either a Persian or a descendant of a Sindhi slave, although Ali himself claimed to be descended from Ali ibn Abi Talib, the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. However, contemporary Muslim historians reject this. In 863, Ali began to attempt to rouse the people of Bahrain in rebellion. However, he was incapable of gaining much traction, and so Ali relocated to Basra. Failing again to find support within the city of Basra, Ali fled to the marshlands outside the city. However, he was caught by local authorities and sent to Wasit. However, Ali was not imprisoned for long, and upon release he attempted to gain following among the Shia Zaydists. At this point you'll be rather unsurprised to find that this latest attempt by Ali was also unsuccessful. However, in AD 69, Ali heard of unrest in Basra and returned to seek out black slaves, beginning to recruit and liberate the Zanj, making promises of freedom and wealth if they joined his side. However, initially only a small number came forward, and Ali derisively became known as the Sahib az-Zanj, or Chief of the Zanj. Ali had increasing success with other groups, however, and many local Bedouins, peasants, craftsmen, and other dispossessed peoples began flocking to his banner. Ali's preaching was attractive to these people, as he was preaching the egalitarian doctrines and meritocratic messages that were common in the Kharijites. After a while, Ali's forces were sizable enough to begin sacking several towns, and eventually he laid siege to Basra in 871. The Battle of Basra started on the 7th of September in 1871. Zanj rebels and allied Arab tribesmen had surrounded Basra and its small garrison of Abbasid troops. The Zanj divided their forces and attacked the defenders, quickly overwhelming them. After gaining access to the city, they began to plunder and kill indiscriminately, with much of the population choosing to flee rather than to fight, making their way to the mosque and the palace. Pockets of resistance by makeshift militias were formed, but were quickly surrounded and destroyed. By the evening on the first day, Ali and his troops had reached the mosque and began to attempt to set fire to it. However, at this point they were counterattacked during their attempt and fell back to the graveyard for the evening. The battle continued throughout Saturday and Sunday, with most of the Zanj forces looting and destroying what sections of the city were under their control, rather than focusing on limiting resistance in the other parts of the city. However, on Monday, a proclamation was issued by one of the Zanj leaders, one Yahya ibn Zayd. Apologies for the pronunciations on that. Yahya offered his protection to all the inhabitants who gathered at the palace. However, once these had gathered, they were blocked in and subsequently massacred. The angry Zanj then spent several more days hunting for survivors. The death toll is listed by some contemporary sources at over 300,000. However, modern scholars suggest it may be more in the range of 10 to 50,000. 300,000 seems quite large to me. However, Iraq was a highly populated country at the time, with modern estimates putting the population at anywhere between 20 and 30 million, and Basra would have been one of the major cities in there. After this defeat, the Abbasids did attempt to recapture Basra. However, they could not match the Zanj in their guerrilla warfare, wore them down, and the Zanj slowly expanded their territory over the next few years. With the Abbasids also fighting the Persian Safavid breakaway state, the Zanj began to expand their activities to the north. And by 879, the Zanj were only 50 miles away from Baghdad, at the fullest extent of their rebellion. This was the same year the Abbasids regained the initiative and took a force under Abu al-Abbas and had great success against Ali's rebels, who retreated back to their capital at al-Muqtara, to the south of Basra. Their makeshift capital was then besieged in 881, and after a few failed attempts at taking the city, a policy of clemency toward deserters encouraged many of them to abandon their rebellion, until the city finally fell 2.5 years later, with Ali and the other leaders killed. With their lands lost and ringleaders executed, the rebellion was officially over. However, they had still caused much destruction and much loss of life. Contemporary figures estimate the total dead at between 500,000 and 2.5 million, with both sides involved in massacres, raids, and sacking of cities. Combined with the Iraqis' high population at this time, these estimates may be believable.